Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, a.k.a. Wishes Mama, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Kate, a.k.a. the Disney Cicerone. And today on Mom Street, we are continuing a series that we started last episode, where we are discussing taking different ages to the Disney parks and kind of specifics around different age groups and what that means for parents or adults that may be traveling with those ages. So last episode, we tackled infants. If you missed that, hop back to that episode if you need to know about that. But today we are talking about the toddler and preschool age. So kind of that 18 months to-ish until about 5 is where we're headed today. So Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. I'm headed to Walt Disney World to check out all the holiday things and spend some time with friends and go to Jollywood Nights, which is very exciting. So I planned a fun little outfit for that. So I'm pumped, but I'm also leaving at 5 a.m. So going to embrace the fact that I'm probably not going to sleep much. But other than that, I'm great. Very excited to dig into this, especially because I feel like this is such a fun but difficult age to take kids to Disney.
Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of experience because the majority of my trips have been at this age. My daughter just got out of preschool age, like she's kindergarten now. So like every trip that she's taken has been in this age because the first time we took her she was about 2. So
yeah.
That's been the 5 or 6 trips that we've taken with my kids have all been this age group. So I have a lot of experience here. So we're going to do our best to give you guys all the tips and tricks without overwhelming you and without kind of stating the obvious, so to speak.
Yeah. And there's some things too that are similar to when you travel with an infant that, if you are kind of in between ages, if you're moving into toddlerhood, but you're still kind of in that baby stage, you maybe go back and listen to the previous episode in the series because we have a lot of things that we probably won't repeat ourselves on in this episode just for sake of time.
Yes, exactly. So if you need that info about stroller naps and quiet places for kiddos and stroller naps, that was the main part that we're like, we don't need to repeat that for this episode. And we're going to give you some more information about rides and things like that. So yes, if you are like, I need a little bit younger for that information, head to the last episode.
Yes. That being said, why don't we dive right in with what we do before we leave on the trip, which is packing. And we've done entire episodes on some packing tips and tricks and whatnot. But specifically for this age, Jackie, what are some things that we want to think about for toddlers?
It's really kind of tricky because a lot of it depends on how they're sleeping and what they're currently sleeping in, because a lot of toddlers, you may still have them in cribs and pack and plays.
Right.
Some toddlers may have graduated up, and especially preschoolers, right, have graduated up to bigger, more traditional style beds. So that is the main thing to think about when packing, because you may still need to take some sheets and things like that. You may not need to. So those types of things. And also potty training is huge at this age. So thinking about extra sets of clothes for possible accidents in the park that you may need, or doing laundry, which we talked about last episode, whether or not you choose to do laundry on your vacation. So that's a big thing to think about. I know when we traveled at this age, granted we drove, so we had a little bit more freedom, but those little top insert seats that you can get for the standard size toilets that kind of make the opening smaller for your kiddos are super helpful. Any of that type of stuff that you're going to need is really important to think about ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely. And I also love a tip that you and I both do, and we didn't realize we both do it before we met each other. But I have like Ziploc bags, and then for every day of the trip, I'll kind of like plan their little outfit that they're going to wear, and then I'll put everything they need for the day in that Ziploc bag, and then I usually pack an extra change of clothes in that bag as well for that particular day, at least one, and then I have a couple extras too, because that's just a rough age where you need to change a lot.
Yeah.
But having everything kind of like labeled, like, Animal Kingdom Day 1, and have it written out. And so all you have to do, especially if you have a partner you're traveling with, or a grandparent or whoever, they can go and pull out that bag for what they're supposed to wear that day and help them get dressed if they need to. And so it's not just all on you in the morning trying to scramble and figure out what they're going to wear for the day. It just takes so much stress out of the process.
Yeah, especially if you're like coordinating or theming outfits, which a lot of us do when we go to the Disney parks, whether it's matching or not, or we do a lot of like coordinating, like we wear like Lion King stuff for Animal Kingdom or Mickey and Minnie for Magic Kingdom, things like that. So especially if you're doing that, it's so easy to have that. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. So I love that you put this note in here about the baby care centers having smaller toilets if that's a need. So even if you are going to bring, an insert or something for the toilet, like a little portable one that you can carry with you, if you just like, my kid can't do those or they don't feel secure on them, which some kids don't, there are smaller toilets available in the baby care center in each park. There is only one baby care center in each park, though, which is not always convenient when you got to go now.
Yes. So it's like, it's a good thing, but it's also like, I don't know how much it might be helpful to you or not,
If you're
depending.
maybe.
Yes. Something that I always suggest, and we're talking about potty training, so I'm just going to mention this here, is if you're in the parks with your kiddo that is potty training, every time you pass a potty, all right, let's go. Anytime before you get in the line, you need to do, you need to be aware of like, okay, when was the last time we went? How long is the line? How do we think we could make it? To those types of conversations and just planning ahead. You're going to need more time when you're transferring your party from one ride to the next because of that.
Yeah, and I actually have a story from when he was 4, and we were in Disneyland and we were getting on Splash Mountain, and we went right before we got in line, but it was like a 45-minute line. And then, of course, like the nervousness of it sometimes then makes them need to go right now. So we got up to the front about to load in, and he's like, I have to go. And I'm like, seriously? But I'm like, okay, but this is like a 12-minute ride and like we're not. And so I found a cast member in that situation. Find a cast member. They will usually let you come back in the exit because they understand that this happens. And so we had to leave and go find a restroom and come back. But we did. We didn't have to wait again. So just make sure you communicate with a cast member if that happens to you.
Yeah, especially now if you only just got in line, it may not be as big of a deal. But yeah, if you've waited 30 minutes for something, you're going to make sure you find a cast member. Don't make yourself wait through that line again because it won't be fun. And just a note about potty training your kiddos, and this is something that I feel like as a mom, I'm just aware of, and you probably are too, but especially during hot months and when you're in the parks, when you're potty training, you really got to pay attention to their output. It's a little easier to see if your kiddos are well hydrated if they've got diapers, because you can really tell how much output is happening. If you pick up what I'm talking about, but when they're potty training, you really just got to pay attention to that and make sure that they're getting enough liquid, because it's a little harder to track when they get to that age.
Yeah, make sure you're bringing, whatever sippy cup or cup that they use that they're used to at home. I usually bring that along just so that they're not trying to navigate new cups in a new situation if you're not used to that. And I used to get something that was just an adapter that you could put on top of water bottles that you would twist on it, and that it would turn a regular water bottle, into a sippy cup. So that actually, or like almost kind of like a bottle, but right. It was really, but it made it so that it didn't pour all over them when they tried to drink from it, which it was the point. So that was really helpful. And it was only a couple of dollars, and it saved us on one of our trips. So
yeah. And when you're looking at packing that type of stuff, a lot of your restaurants, you're going to have just open cups. Some of them will have lids with straws, but then some of the places, if you get kids meals, they have like juice boxes or like milk bottles that do have like that open. It's not a massive opening at the top, but open enough that they could easily spill it all down themselves. So whatever you need for your kiddo, if they're not quite ready to handle that, make sure you think about packing those types of things. And anything, bib wise, we always were fans of, we had like roll up silicone, like table, like placemats that we would bring with our kiddos at this age, especially for restaurants, just to help give them a wider space that we felt was clean. We just take them home, or take them back to the room and wipe them down, let them dry out overnight, and roll them back up and stick them in the bag. So
we also have the disposable ones too that you can stick to the table, which are really, those were really helpful too, just for the ease of being able to throw them out afterwards and not to think about it. So either way, I think we've used the silicone ones too. So it depends on which way you want to go with that. But.
Right. Yes. And again, if you need more details on packing, it was like episode 2 of Mom Street that we did, because we knew that was going to be one of the big things when we first started this podcast. So go back there. And if you still want more tips and tricks, head over to our Discord channel. Our good friend Kirk at Walrus Carp, we are in his Pocket Fam Discord. We have a whole Mom Street section. Ask your questions in there. We will be happy to give you our best advice.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we talked a little bit previous episode about ordering supplies ahead of time and stocking up, specifically like pull-ups, wipes, and snacks. You can order them. My method was kind of like pack them in your suitcase. And then once you use up kind of the consumables, then you have space for souvenirs. But, yours was more like order it from someplace to have it delivered, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really just depends again on your preference. And we talked about this last episode on if you feel like you have enough space, as the kiddos get bigger, their clothes get bigger, which means they need more suitcase space. So
Yep.
it may have worked out well when they were infants that you could just pack it along and then have that extra space on the way home, but it may not work out as well as they get bigger. So just plan accordingly for that. Especially, the pull-ups are bigger. You might need more wipes for different potty accidents and things like that. So just keeping all of that in mind when you're planning ahead for those things that you're going to need that you could order ahead if you choose to.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to some stroller talk.
Yes.
Jackie, do you want to dive in here with this one?
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of briefly overview everything we talked about last episode that kind of applies to this age as well. I'm always going to advocate for kids up to 5, 6, 7 years old. If you think they need a stroller, bring a stroller. And even if you're questioning it, bring a stroller, because I think it's really important for the kids to have that space to just kind of like, okay, sit back and relax and be pushed through the parks, because sometimes it's necessary for their feet. Sometimes it's necessary for like my peace of mind. If we're traveling across Magic Kingdom and we're going through the hub and it's a busy time, I'm going to tell my kiddo who is now 8, hey, sit in the stroller. Because I know where you are then. I'm not at risk of getting separated from you. Like, just get in the stroller. And he whines and complains at me, but he understands why I have him do it. So all of those reasons why I definitely suggest having one. Again, check your dimensions with Disney. Make sure that you are within their requirements. And just, again, a reminder that no wagons are allowed in the Disney parks unless they're deemed medically necessary. Choosing a stroller that is easy to fold up and open. Again, we talked about that last time. You can roll most strollers onto the monorail in the Skyliner if they are single file at the Skyliner. Renting strollers, again, is also an option. Again, we talked about all of this in the infant episode at length. So if you need more information about strollers, head there. Remember your stroller covers, still important for this age especially, and marking your stroller in some way. That way, if it gets moved, you still can find it in the sea of strollers.
Right. So we also talked about diaper bags and park bags in our previous episodes. We won't get too far into that. But we'll remember that you're going to have security go through any bag that you bring into the park, most likely. In Disney World, it's a little bit different of a process because sometimes they pull you aside for a check through a bag. Sometimes they don't. Right. In Disneyland, every single bag is going to be gone through. So yes. Having it organized, especially into different bags, either they're, plastic bags or ones that are, made for organizing your diaper bag, will help you and security kind of like repack everything. So that you're not spending a lot of time doing that after security. Yes. And we've also talked about making sure that you don't leave any valuables in your stroller ever. So you can leave things in your stroller that if somebody steals it, you're not going to be heartbroken. But anything that's of value, make sure you put in a bag that you can take with you whenever you park your stroller and walk away from it.
Yes, and always bring snacks, especially at this age.
Yes.
Any food that is safe food that you're going to need in between meals. Toddlers and preschoolers are known snackers. No matter who, no matter what kids you're talking about, I feel like they're just known snackers. So definitely make sure and don't be afraid to bring that in. You can bring full meals in as long as there are no glass containers and no loose ice. So keep those two considerations in. You can Ziploc baggie your ice if you get ice from the ice machine at your resort, or use, ice blocks and things like that. But we are very big on bringing full meals and especially lunches into the parks for our kids at that age, because it's just so much easier than trying to fight them over what food they want. We do the fight at dinner and we bring their lunch in with us. So that is our way to do it.
Yeah, and I would say, especially at those younger ages too, they don't eat a ton, and usually we look for places that we can share our meals with them. It's usually where we go with that. Sometimes if we have maybe 2 kids that are younger, maybe they can split a meal between them, because those meals are expensive and they just don't eat that much. Yeah. So keep that in mind, as we'll talk about dining a little bit later in this episode, but just keep that in mind, that sometimes bringing their snacks or like a main part of their meal that they'll eat, that they'll eat, then they can just kind of be supplemented with some stuff from everybody else.
Right. And there's always popcorn and pretzels and things like that in the parks, but sometimes it's easier just to have stuff on hand. That way you're not searching for it in the midst of them being a very hungry toddler or preschooler.
Ugh, yes, definitely.
Yes. And the other thing to note that we talked about again at length the last episode is just ear protection is always suggested, even still at this age. I mean, my kiddos, even up to this point, they're 6 and 8, and I'm already thinking about what kind of ear protection I need for them for their next trip. But they also are a little more sensitive to some of the loud sounds. So depending on your kiddo will depend on what you need. But I think especially at that younger toddler age, you're still going to want to have some sort of a headphone situation for them for a few of the rides, but mostly just for fireworks at that age.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about getting to the parks a little bit. And we did this at length last episode, so we're just going to touch on a couple of things. So flying, as I said before, extra time, extra clothes, extra wipes, extra pull-ups. If in training, extra everything. Like just make sure that you just like don't shortchange yourself with time. They don't think it's going to take less time than it is. Just give yourself a lot of extra time. Excuse me. Also, consider using like nighttime pull-ups on the plane because sometimes you might be stuck with turbulence where you are not allowed to get out of your seat for safety reasons. Yeah. And if your kid's like, I gotta go, like you're now stuck in the situation where you're like, I literally can't. I can't let you. You want to take them to the restroom. You can when it's safe, but you can't when it's like that. So having those nighttime pull-ups, especially if you're on a long haul flight from somewhere, can just help you from not having a leak situation in your seat, which is not fun for anybody.
Yeah. And do your best to prep your kids for that, right? Like as much as you're able to, depending on the age that they are. And, because typically you don't want to say like, well, you're just going to have to go on your pull-up. You don't really want to do that when you're potty training.
No, not.
But just prep them for that situation because I know, they may be a kid that may have a really hard time with that. So just think about those little things ahead of time and just prep them just a little.
Yeah, exactly. Don't forget that their ears won't pop without help. So make sure they have some snacks or something to suck on or drink. Mostly it's the worst when you're descending, but it can also be on the ascent as well when you're taking off. So take off and landing. And long before you're landing, as soon as they begin their initial descent, like make sure that they have something. Something that I love at this age that I used all the time was a CARES harness, which is a 5-point FAA approved harness that basically transforms the normal seatbelt into a 5-point harness so they can't, disappear off the seat. They can stay put. And it's not exactly like a car seat. Car seats are still the safest way for kids to fly. But, your car seat, maybe you don't want to drag it on the plane. Maybe you don't have one that's FAA approved or certified. Maybe you don't want to have your kids sitting by the window because you have to if they have a car seat. So this is really fun. It's for children between 22 and 44 pounds. And I've seen them as cheap as like $30. And they're really lightweight. You can carry them on. They're just like fold up into a little pouch. And it really helps your kid, I think, understand they have to stay put because if they're used to traveling in a car in a 5-point harness, like something about that triggers in their brain, like, oh, I have to stay here.
Right.
Versus just that little seatbelt, they slide out from under it and they like move around and like they toddlers at this age can be really, really difficult to fly with because they want to get up and run around and like crawl on the floor and they can't do that for safety. Right. So I really recommend the CARES harness. That's one of my favorite things to have. But yeah, they're really hard to contain. So keeping them busy is really important, including having lots and lots of snacks and activities for them to do.
Yes.
Again, no shame for screens in these kinds of situations.
Nope.
Honestly, it might save your sanity because some of these flights are really long or there's delays and you're like stuck there trying to keep your kid entertained. And it's much less stressful for you to have everybody be calm in that situation. But if you don't want them to have screens or not the entire time, which I totally understand, a roll of painter's tape, like blue painter's tape, can be really fun for them. Like just peel up a little place, they stick and unstick until it's not sticky anymore, and then you put it in the trash and give another piece, and then you'll do it everywhere, and it doesn't damage anything, and it's really, really helpful. Also, like a reusable sticker activity, same kind of concept.
Yep.
We really liked those mess-free marker sets that you can get that has like the one marker on the top and like pages they can flip through, and they just like scribble on it and like reveals stuff. Like
We love those.
They're so great.
We always find them in like the dollar section at Target. That's the one where, and we almost every car trip that we go on, which I'll get to cars here in a moment, but we grab a new one of those for them, and that keeps them entertained for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Something that's magic. So it helps a lot. Lift the flap books are also really good if you want something that's a little more interactive with them, depending on their age. And the mini magnet drawing board too, that's kind of like almost like an Etch-a-Sketch kind of thing, but like where you can draw on it with a pen. Those are really, really fun for kids at that age. If they're a little bit younger, the suction cup fidget spinners where you can put it on the tray and then they can like bat it around and stuff is really fun. But I also recommend packing a couple of activities for your suitcase that they don't see on the way there that you can pull out for the way home that are brand new.
Yeah.
Because you need something to come in clutch when the tantrum starts, when something happens, when somebody's melting down, really tired. You need something in your back pocket to pull out to make it home. And also pack way more snacks than you think you need. I swear my kids eat like 3 times the amount of food on a flight than they ever normally would. I don't know why. And they still do. Like my older kids do. They just pack these massive bags of snacks and then they eat the whole thing on the flight. I'm like, okay.
My kids are that way in the car too. I think just because they're stuck sitting, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what else am I gonna do?
Also having them like bring a favorite blankie or stuffed animal or something that's familiar to them can also really help bring them a lot of calm in that situation. And also maybe if it's an overnight flight or if it's a late flight or early morning flight, that might also help them go to sleep if they're sleepy, if they have something that's familiar to them. Also, something we found out the hard way, and I'm telling you so you don't have to find out the hard way, is check to make sure that there are air sickness bags nearby. Yeah. Because you just don't really know if your little one is airsick or maybe they're just feeling it that day before it's happening to you. And it's hard to catch with toddlers, quite honestly. Yeah. You might not catch it. But at least have it nearby just in case. 2 out of 3 of my kids got airsick, and almost every time we flew. We finally learned as they're older now to give them like kids Dramamine, and that's how they like make it through flights. Yeah. But we also always pack in extra gallon Ziploc bags, a couple of them of our own, just in case something happens to their clothes. We need to put them in one to keep them isolated, and also just to have one for air sickness purposes. So I love those Ziploc bags.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're questioning it, something that we did, because my oldest gets car sick, but really only in like the mountains if it gets real like stop and go and windy kind of. Yeah. So we ran to just like a drugstore, CVS, and bought the ones that they have like the sturdier ring at the top with the bag where you can tie it off then when you're done. So if you have a history of that in your family, or you're like, well, they may just save yourself and go and grab, you can buy a box of them for fairly inexpensive to have. And we just keep a couple in our car now at all times, just in case.
And I will say kind of a weird phenomenon is if they are car sick, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll get air sick and vice versa. They're kind of different sensations. And so it's very, very hard to predict. So you can't just say like, oh, well, my kid doesn't get car sick, so they'll probably be fine on the plane. I wouldn't bet on that because I have one kid that gets very car sick but doesn't get air sick, and one that's vice versa. So that's all I'll say. Just be prepared.
Yes. Yeah, better to be over prepared in that situation for sure.
Yeah, it's not pleasant for anybody. So but anyway, why don't you talk about driving a little bit, Jackie?
Yes. So again, like we said, you'll hear us say this probably 20 more times this episode. We talked about this a lot last episode. But just a few things to remind you if you're driving, planning plenty of stops for stretching. If you're able to stop where there are parks or open spaces to run around, especially for toddler and preschool age, that is a lifesaver. Giving them, an extra 20 minutes to go run around, even if it's just you running and chasing them or them chasing each other, or, however you can make it work, even if you just got a little bit of room to work with. Driving while they sleep. Again, we are big on that as well, because it's just so helpful to make it longer stretches. You're still going to have to do potty breaks. You're still going to want to do stretch breaks. But if they're sleeping, it makes it a lot easier. And really a lot of the same as what Kate mentioned for flying is what I would do driving in the car, right? They're still stuck. You have a little bit more flexibility for being able to get up and out of the seat if they really need to, but all of those same types of activities. But the other thing is like sitting in the back and rotating with drivers if you can, if you've got space to be able to do that, and giving them someone new to play with. So like trading off between you and a spouse if you're able to, or if you've got other adults traveling with you, is really helpful. We would do in the car like dry erase books as well as like sticker books. And then one of the things that my kids love and still love are they're called like, I think they're water wow books is what they're called, but they're like you fill the pen with water, right? And you just you paint with the water on the page and it shows the picture. And then it dries really easily and you can reuse it after it dries. So those types of books, any of that type of reusable that's not going to make a huge mess kind of deal, that's the way you want to go.
Yeah. I did see somebody that like recommended like Play-Doh and stuff like that. And I was like, I would never do that on an airplane.
No.
Because it's a huge mess and they're going to make a mess with it. You know they are because they do in your own home. And like I would never do that to the flight attendants and stuff. So be careful like when you see kind of those recommendations out there. Like you think about if it falls on the floor, is it like, am I going to be able to retrieve it? Is it going to create a huge mess for somebody else? Like, you know, always think through those kinds of things or a mess for yourself that you don't want to deal with.
Yeah. And the only thing like that I would consider would be like if it's like a stress ball type situation where it's not going to pull apart, right? They make some of those like more foamy, doughy kind of stress balls. Something like that might be a great option as long as your kiddo doesn't like chuck it across the plane or the car. You know, it's toddlers. You never really know.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, you definitely want to consider that on both ends because you also don't necessarily want Play-Doh in their car seat either. So, you know, think about those types of things. And again, like Kate mentioned, new things if you're able to, you know, separate stuff out for the way there and the way back, new books, or we always did like we would make different playlists for our car rides and include whatever their, you know, most recent favorite songs are and things like that, which was Mickey Mouse for probably 3 years straight. So we have this random album of Mickey Mouse, like sort of nursery rhyme-ish songs that like my husband and I still know by heart, and they'll like pop up on rotation like when we put like our Spotify on shuffle every once in a while, and we're like, whoa. Because that was the only thing for a while when my son was like probably about 18 months that would like help calm him down was if we told him Mickey Mouse was singing to him. So you know, it was cute at the time until it continued for multiple years. And now it's like I've got PTSD every time I hear certain Mickey Mouse songs. Luckily, they're not like the normal ones. They're, like I said, they're more like obscure on this random CD that we found. So, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
I have that for Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Whenever those like old episodes come on of anywhere, I'm just like, oh yeah, like this was what kept us sane.
Yep.
But also made us insane.
Yes. And downloading multiple episodes of things that you need to on your device, like Kate mentioned, you know, screens are, just do it. Just do it. Now, I don't suggest letting them sit in front of the screen for the entirety of your, you know, 8-hour car ride, but here and there to help, I think is a great idea.
Oh, and I didn't mention, when you do screens, especially on airplanes, you have to have headphones, period, full stop. I understand that there's a lot of kids at this age that won't keep headphones on their heads. So do some experimenting ahead of time. Sometimes they make those ones that are like soft bands that will go around their head that they feel more or less like a hat. You know, find one that they will keep on their head before you travel because you cannot have the entire airplane listening to your kids' stuff. And the flight attendant will come over and tell you you need to use headphones, and then you'll be stuck because the kid will want to hear the thing and they don't want to wear the headphones. So just do yourself a favor, be kind to people around you, and find some good headphones for your kids.
Yeah. And those headphones then can also double as your ear protection for fireworks. That's what we did a lot was we would just take the cord and we would just wind it up on the headband part of the headphones and just take them into the parks with us.
Yeah, there you go. I have a comment from Tracy that says 18 hours of Thomas the Tank Engine did us in. We started flying after that. I feel that. Yes.
Yeah. That's why overnight is really helpful for us because we have like a 14.5-hour drive. That's without stops. So we driving overnight is very helpful, and that my van has a DVD player in it, which is also very helpful. Yes. So again, use the screens when you need to. Do what you got to do to get yourself there. Because then once you get there, you can get the rest of the wiggles out or crash in bed if you need to, and it'll be okay. And then the next morning, you'll be great and good to go.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to some resorts. And we talked about specific resorts for pack and plays and stuff on our last episode, but this one, let's aim towards more like activities and things for toddlers. So, Jackie, what do you think? What are your recommendations for Disney World here?
So the first thing that I love about Disney resorts, and now this is true for a few of the other kind of good partner hotels as well, but every Disney resort has some sort of a pool and some sort of playgrounds, and probably multiple playgrounds across the property. And we use them almost every trip now. It is so helpful to have that. Especially if your kiddos are like done being in the parks, but they still have time that they need to be awake to like keep them on their schedule. Yeah. Those are super helpful. Just a note about the pools. There are several that are like 0 entry pools, which is helpful to know. So kind of look at the pictures of that to see. That way it's helpful to know as a parent, right? Like what you got going on with the pool area. But they also will have life jackets that you can use. So if you don't have space to bring whatever flotation device your kiddo may need, they do have like life jackets that you can borrow at the pools. So just a note, we always brought our own, but again, it depends on your preference and your space and what your kiddo needs for that particular thing. Some of them also have splash pad areas. There's lots of fun places that your kids can explore as well at the resorts. So all of that is good to keep in mind.
Yeah. So in terms of sleeping, this can get tricky. If your kid's kind of like aging out of a pack and play, you could choose to bring or order an inflatable or portable toddler bed for your Disney resort, as long as adding the bed does not exceed the maximum occupancy of the room. So typically for standard rooms, there are ones that have like 5th sleeper rooms, depending on what resort you're staying in. So remember that your toddler is a person. Yes, they count as a person, and you don't want to exceed Disney's occupancy in the room. Something we did is if they were going to sleep in a big kid bed, but we are worried about them rolling out of the bed. A trick that we always did was we would take some of extra towels and we would roll them up, and then we would put them underneath the fitted sheet. Yep. And then it like would hold it in place so that there's a bumper so they wouldn't roll off the bed. Mm-hmm. And that worked out really well for us on multiple occasions.
Yeah, you can use extra pillows, extra blankets, anything that housekeeping can bring you. You can also request bed rails. Yeah. So we talked about requesting pack and plays and cribs and things like that. You can also request bed rails that will go up. Now, granted, they're going to be just kind of those, maybe 3 feet wide ones. So they're not going to go the entire length of your bed, especially if you've got the kiddo sleeping in one of the full-size beds in the room. So keep that in mind. You may want to do like a combo deal of like some towels, some bed rails, depending on your kiddo. I have been known to, and I don't know that I would suggest this, but we were staying in an Art of Animation family suite one year, and we pulled the bed off of the pull down table and put the mattress on the floor. So, again, be aware of fire code, make sure it's safe, and make sure you put everything back if you need to do some minor rearranging for safe sleeping purposes.
Yeah, mainly make sure that you have an exit you can get out the door if you need to in an emergency.
And that housekeeping can get in, because that is something that they do require at Disney. Even if you opt out of housekeeping, they will require safety checks of the rooms. So they need to be able to get in and things like that. Another thing that I just suggest, especially at this age, is giving them some wind down time in the evening, because they have likely had a big day of lots of stimulation, way more than they get at home, even if they're, going to daycare or preschool or things like that. So, what we typically do is we get back into the room. We try to keep the lights low as much as we can. We do baths or showers. A lot of the resorts now will have just stand-up showers, so that's something to consider when you're looking at bath time. You may need to kind of figure out what you're going to do with that. But then we will we put them to bed, we do a story, or if like they just need to zone out, there is a really great channel on your Disney Resort TV. And I'm pretty sure it's channel 30 from my research that I've done, but don't quote me on that. It plays the new Mickey Mouse shorts during the day, but then in the evening, it switches over to a rotation of these like bedtime stories, and they are basically like audio books with just kind of like panning pictures of the book pages. My kids love them. It is one of the things that they look forward to, and they get sad if we don't have time to listen to at least one before bed. But they've got, it's Cars, it's Frozen, it's Mickey, it's all sorts of different characters, and they go on a rotation. So my kids love using that kind of as their bedtime story when we're there. That is a big hit with them.
Like as soon as you said it, I was starting to sing the music in my head. Do, 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 do.
Yeah.
Do, do.
Yes. Yeah, there's like this interlude in between where it'll show you all the times, and it's like this. Yeah, nope, I hear it in my head too. But it's so, and I catch myself just like, ah. It's one of those Disney parks things, right? Like you just, you just want to, yeah. And we happened on it on accident, like on my kids' like second trip, and we were like, oh, this is it.
See, what my kids, now that they're older, they get mad when it switches to story time because they enjoy cartoons. And
and that's usually what we'll watch. Like if we need to wind down for nap time, we usually will watch a Mickey cartoon, because that's my kids just call them, can we watch the Mickey cartoons? It's like, yes, we can watch the Mickey cartoons. So it's good. Yes. But we love that station a lot. So that's a big help, and just something to consider, because chances are good that your toddler will not sleep as well in the same room as you as maybe your infant did. Maybe not, but chances
more
are
aware.
Good. Yeah, you need to be aware of where they're positioned, where they can see, and like if you have multiple adults with you, you kind of got to divide and conquer. If you need to like break down and tear down stuff and maybe set out, if it rains, set out wet stuff, or get, stuff prepped for the next day, you kind of got to divide and conquer and get as much of it done as you can. And then either call it or just know that you may have to wait an hour or so and then get back up and do the rest of it by flashlight. So those things just to consider. I think we've all been there, done that when it comes to that, but just considering kind of your evening game plan. So that way you know what needs done while maybe one of you is doing showers, the other one can be doing some room prep.
I can also just mention, especially if you have a difficult sleeper for a kiddo, it can take up to 3 nights. Usually it takes 3 nights for them to adjust to any time changes, first of all, and also just to a new sleeping environment. So if you are losing your mind on day 2, thinking like none of us are sleeping and this is awful, just hang in there, because usually after the 3rd night, they'll start settling in and making it. That doesn't mean that those first 3 nights aren't going to be a challenge, but that is usually the case, and it's true for us adults too. It takes us 3 days to adjust to things. So just hang in there. It's going to be okay. And I will say, this is always my PSA for this age, is my son went on that trip when he was 4. My mother-in-law was in a different room. We were in a motel at that point at Disneyland. And she left the room after saying goodnight to everybody while we were doing bath time. So we were really distracted. We did not close the safety latch up high. And my 4-year-old son found his way outside of our room while we were sleeping because we had white noise on. And luckily, a cast member found him who was walking by, and we had taught him our room number. That was something that we taught him when we came there. We said, we're in room 115, and we made him repeat it over and over again in case he got lost somehow. And a cast member actually returned him to our door, thank goodness, and he was safe and sound. But this is my PSA to all parents that age, they don't know that they're not supposed to leave the room. It's a new situation. They don't understand necessarily that it's not safe to do that. So make sure that you are throwing that safety latch, maybe putting something noisy in front of the door. So if they do try to open it, you're aware that they're just trying to do that. Right. And keep your toddler safe. We used to have a door alarm too, because my son was very precocious and tried to get out everywhere. So do whatever you need to do for your peace of mind to know that your child is staying in the room while you sleep, because you can be really tired and they can be wandering out. So
yes, so true. Yeah, the way that our room ended up, our stroller almost always ended up in front of the door, which was always kind of helpful. Easy enough for us to move it, but harder for the kiddo to move it. So it made it okay for, emergencies. We could still get out easily and just kind of shove it out of the way. But for the kiddos, it was a little trickier.
Right. So just make sure that, especially if you have a curious kiddo, that you're keeping them safe. So
Yes. Okay, let's talk just a little bit about the different levels of resort at Disney World and just a couple notes. Again, we've talked about this for infants, but let's just briefly talk about some things for the value resorts. Again, they're good for smaller families that can do standard rooms. So we talked about that they have that ability to fold up the secondary bed in several rooms, not just value, but a lot of the values do have that option. So keeping that in mind. Again, we talked about renting bed rails or using extra pillows, things like that, that you can utilize to help your kiddos stay in bed. The food courts at value resorts are very, very toddler and preschool friendly. They have a lot of, pizza, pasta, chicken nuggets, French fries, those types of things. So very, very kiddo friendly. But they are typically further away from the parks when it comes to transportation. Now you have a couple ones that are nice because they're on the Skyliner, but like if you're looking at like the all-star resorts, you have to give yourself enough buffer time to get back for nap time. And I do suggest keeping your kiddo on a nap schedule as much as you possibly can, because if they're not going to sleep well at night, maybe they'll get a little bit of extra during that nap time that can help save your sanity. So Pop Century and Art of Animation are great because even if you have a kiddo that falls asleep in the stroller on the way back, you can keep them in that stroller when it comes to the Skyliner. Same thing
or a stroller.
Yes, as long as it is an inline stroller and not a side-by-side stroller. Same thing for some of the other deluxe resorts, which we'll talk about in a moment. But that's kind of in a nutshell. Again, they'll have a pool, they have the playgrounds, all those activities as well.
Yeah. So for a moderate one, a lot of these have fifth sleeper rooms, which just basically means they have a smaller bed that will pull down that is shorter. So if you can have a full size adults sleep on them. I have in the past, but they're and my teenage son does okay on them. So
yeah,
but they actually would be really great for a toddler because they're nice and small. That's Caribbean Beach, Port Orleans, Riverside. These ones have fifth sleeper rooms. Again, and you can also get the bed rails to help them keep from rolling out of bed. And the Caribbean Beach one is also like a hub for the Skyliner, so that one helps a lot. There's definitely more space in these rooms than the value ones. There's better pools. Usually they have like a slide in their pools. Not that your toddler's necessarily going to care about that.
right.
But they also have usually splash pads for toddlers, which is a huge win as well for that. And the food courts do have moderately better food than the value. Some of it's more themed to the resort, I will say that.
Yes.
And still they have great kids meal options. Virtually all these resorts do.
Yes, yeah, that's for sure. And then as far as deluxe resorts go, you're going to have more space typically if you're doing a deluxe resort, which can be really nice if your budget allows and if you want that extra space. And that's a big benefit with toddlers, especially if you know that like you cannot be sleeping in the same room as them, or like they have this, the toddler FOMO where they have to see everything that's going on at all times. Having that extra space is helpful. And they typically will have like bigger kitchenette spaces and things like that for snacks and food in your room. But they also, again, have great food choices for adults, and the kids' meals are really, really toddler and preschool friendly there. They're typically closer to the parks, and they likely have quicker transportation, which is better for coming and going for nap time. Not always the case. It just depends on the resort. So do some research and look at the map to see location-wise where the resorts you're considering may be found.
And Len's asking, do water slides have height requirements? I'm pretty sure there are for at least the like more moderate ones, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. I feel like there are.
I think so too, but I know they have maximums because on some of them my husband was like, I can't go down the slide.
Sorry, Andrew.
I know.
So while you look that up, I'm going to talk about, let's talk about Disneyland just briefly. Really for Disneyland, staying off-site is usually the best bet unless you have the money to spend on staying at a Disney property, which are spendy because there's only 3 of them and they're all deluxe level. So I usually recommend staying, closer to that plaza entrance off Harbor Boulevard. I don't usually recommend staying on Catella if you can avoid it. It's just a longer walk for everybody. But I also recommend the Howard Johnson that's off of Harbor Boulevard has a really, really great splash pad area, like splash play structure for kids.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really fun. So if it's important to you that your kiddo be able to kind of swim or get some like water time, I would recommend that as a resort for toddlers and preschoolers.
Yeah. So according to Disney website, there's no posted height minimum to use the slides, but every person must slide alone. So you can't carry a child down. And they need to be able to like swim out of the way. I know that when we stayed at Port Orleans French Quarter, my son was fine. My daughter was still pretty little. And so, but they will allow like my husband to be there to help her get out of the way kind of deal for that.
Yeah, but if they're too scared to go by themselves, they can't go.
Yeah.
Essentially. And if they're not, I would not let my kid go down if they were strong enough swimmer with a life vest on to be able to kind of like kick their way out of the way or push their way out of the way personally.
Yeah, because they can wear their life jackets or floaties or whatever they have going down the slides. So
yeah. So depends on the kid and the situation, I think.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. On to the parks. Let's get to this part now.
Let's get to
Okay.
the parks.
We're going to kind of fly through some of this because some of it's very similar to what we talked about with infants. But let's talk about just general park information. We talked about this last episode, but with toddlers and preschoolers, how many days do you think in the parks for your trip?
Well, for Disneyland, I would recommend 3 days, 2 days at Disneyland, 1 day at California Adventure. And I think by the end of that, everybody would be exhausted and ready to be gone. If you wanted to take a slower pace trip, though, I have done this with kids this age where we kind of take long breaks in the afternoon. We've done like a 5-day trip before with just a lot of rest built in and not having to push ourselves so far just so that we could see everything. I think that could get a little bit long for the Disneyland Resort for most people. But if you're like a huge Disney fan and you want to take it at a slower pace, I think 5 days could work. But for most people, 3 days will be plenty and you'll be done. How about for Walt Disney World, Jackie?
I really suggest a minimum of 4 park days because you can spread them out then. Maybe you can do a hopper if you want to. I don't necessarily suggest that at this age. I think 1 day per park is plenty because some of the parks that maybe you aren't spending the full day gives you a little bit of extra rest time, like an Animal Kingdom or something like that. But I would suggest 4 park days minimum. And I always suggest, and I said this last episode, to only do 2 park days in a row, and then you got to have a break day in there because that gets really, really long, and it's early mornings and it may be later nights depending on your preference with schedule and fireworks and bedtimes and all those types of things. So I would say at least 4 park days.
Yeah, I would agree. And I have Lem in my chat saying, dang, 5 days at Disneyland seems like a lot. And I will say that it's different when you're traveling with this age because you just can't get very much done because you're taking them to the bathroom all the time, literally all the time. Meals take forever because you have to clean up everybody afterwards. You have to do pull-up changes or diaper changes depending on their ages. They need naps.
And that's right is the big thing. Like you got to think if I'm at Magic Kingdom and I'm getting back to most of the resorts, I'm going to have to leave with what my kiddo's nap typically was. We would have to leave Magic Kingdom by like 12:30, and we were lucky to make it back to Magic Kingdom by like 5.
Yeah, it's majority of the day is like taking them back for a nap. And you really have to. You could maybe get away with a day or 2, but then they start to melt down where you can't even like function after that. So it's like, it's not even a question. You have to go take a nap. And so that eats into your park time. And it also is like, you have to think of, we had like grandparents traveling with us at this age too, and they move a little bit slower and whatnot. So that's why I say these, even though a long trip seems kind of silly, like we took weeks, usually not weeks, we took a week.
Yeah.
Like 7 days at Disney World is what we usually do with kind of like a break or 2 in the middle. And that really helped us so that we didn't feel like we were trying to like kill ourselves getting to everything,
Yeah.
So
And Stephanie in my chat over here mentioned napping in the stroller, and that's great. If you've got a toddler or preschooler that will, I envy you because my kids would never. So we always had to
neither.
plan to go back.
Yeah.
They got the toddler FOMO and they would not sleep no matter how tired they were. They still don't. Like they still have a hard time if they're not, if there's something going on around them, they still have a hard time. So if you have a kiddo that will nap, great. We talked a lot about napping in the stroller in our infant episode, so head over there if that's your situation. But yeah, my kids would not. So we had to plan that large break in the afternoon.
Yeah. Usually I would do like every other day we tried to get back for a nap because it was so much time out of our day. And that would at least we'd try to catch up, but it's challenging.
Well, and I think it also depends on, are you, a lot of things, are you planning to try to do a firework or an evening show with them? Is that multiple nights in a row you're trying to do that? If we're trying to make it to Magic Kingdom fireworks, we have to go back and take a nap. If we're trying to make it to, Fantasmic, we have to go back and take a nap.
Yeah, for sure. So I think and your kiddo more than anybody, but accumulated sleep loss is going to increase your chances of massive meltdowns from them and you. So
Stephanie's saying for me, the problem was my boyfriend. He needed his rest and his nap. And I feel that was me. Like, nope, I need a nap.
Yeah. Honestly, they're long days for parents in the parks at this age, especially. Like you're exhausted. So give yourself a break too.
Yes. Just want to briefly talk about hoppers versus base tickets. Disneyland, it's kind of a given. You want to get those park hoppers over there. It's so much easier, even at this age, to hop between your parks. Disney World, it really just depends on your interests as your travel party and your budget as your travel party, I think. We typically opted just for a base ticket, one park per day, but I know a lot of people that prefer the park hoppers at that age because then they can hop to what their kiddos are interested in. So it really just depends on your situation.
Yeah, our budget never let us have anything more than one park per day. Quite honestly, it's a lot of extra money to pay for something that you may not need with a kid this age. So just weigh that as it may be with your particular budget and your family.
Yeah, the only thing that always got us with the base tickets was we always wanted more time in Magic Kingdom. That was always the hard one. So keep that in mind when you're planning accordingly.
All right, so prepping your kids is much easier than at the infant stage, but it is also much more needed at this age because there's so many new things they're stepping into in a completely different environment if they're not used to going to Disney. So, watching POVs, ride footage and whatnot with your kiddos, like on YouTube, and like talking about them on what to expect is really, really helpful for them. Also prepping yourself for any particular height requirements that are on certain rides, prepping your kids so they know they can't go on certain things, especially if they've seen it or a sibling has talked about how amazing it is. Prepping them. We always have, their little height chart. And sometimes I've put like the little numbers for what rides they can go on next to their height chart. So they know like I'm this, I'm Soarin' height and I'm Rainier Springs height now.
I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's hugely important. And that's something that we got our kids involved with too. Like, okay, we're going to, if we know we have a trip coming up, okay, let's measure, let's see where we're at now and see, what we're close to, what we can ride. And we still do that now because my daughter is still she's not tall enough for everything yet. She just hit 48 inches.
Ooh,
so our next trip is going to be really fun because it's like the majority of everything that she can go on now, which is exciting. But prepping for that is hugely important.
And remember that there is also child swap, rider swap, baby swap, depending on what you want to call it. But if your child is not not tall enough to ride or is not ready to ride, emotionally ready to ride, that's also a thing. You can go with your child to the cast member in the front and say, hey, can we do rider swap? And they'll usually give you instructions for that attraction on what to do. But typically they'll have one parent or guardian go through the queue and wait for the ride. And then you'll have a pass for rider swap after that to go through like the lightning lane usually with at least one other person, depending on the attraction, so that you don't have to ride by yourself. But definitely use that if you're going to have to switch off, because then you won't have to wait twice in a row just because you have a child that can't ride.
Yes. And that is also very helpful if you were talking about older siblings, right? If you've got an older kiddo that can ride something and a younger kiddo that can't, it's very helpful because the cast members are wonderful and they will 9 times out of 10 let your older kiddo go twice so they can wait with the first parent in the line and then also get to go with the second parent. So that's a nice little bonus if you've got a bigger kiddo that's with you too.
Yeah, for sure.
Something just to keep in mind if you're thinking about planning a trip or you haven't decided yet. Remember that if your kiddo is under 3, they're free.
Right.
And we took advantage of that with both of our kiddos because it's totally worth it to save that. You won't save any on the resort, unfortunately, but we don't want them to charge extra for extra people anyway. So that's okay. But if you don't have to buy their park tickets, that also means if you're using like multi-pass lightning lanes, you don't have to purchase that for them. They are just automatically with you on those rides that they're able to ride on that.
So they get to scan in with that? Does it like assign them to you?
No.
No, they just get to walk in.
Yeah. Yeah, they won't. If you're using multi-pass or anything like that, they won't.
Because it wouldn't be in the system because they didn't purchase it.
Right. So I would let my kiddo scan my band because they got sad that they didn't get to scan a band. So
that's what's king. I was like,
you want to scan. Now you can get magic bands for them if you choose to, like part of your like resort package. You can. They're just not linked to anything until they're older. So depends on if you want to spend the money to get them one. But yeah, they won't be linked to anything with that.
Right. I do have a note here from Allie Beth in our chat saying sometimes dividing and conquering with age groups for a small amount of time is necessary too. And I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially if you got a mixed group with an older kiddo and they want to go on a ride and you don't really care if you go on that ride or not, you can maybe take the younger one for a snack or another ride that they want to do or something like that. And it's okay if you don't, if it's something you really want to do, then, use the rider swap option. But just know that like sometimes you're going to have to divide and conquer and do different things at some points. And that's okay too. It's not like you have to be together every single second of the vacation to make it count. So
yes. And that's where those lists that we always talk about making before. So what the priorities are, like I can say like, I don't really need to ride that. Like we've done that with like Rise of the Resistance. Great attraction. But I don't need to ride it every time. My husband loves it. So I'm like, nope, you go with our oldest. I'm going to go take our youngest and we're going to go walk through the marketplace. Just like text me when you're done. So that is perfectly fine as well. There's lots to look at, lots to do, lots of snacks to be eaten with your younger one. As you wait, you'll be okay.
I think that was one of my favorite memories with one of my kids was like they went on Splash Mountain and my youngest couldn't go. And so we went to get one of those like Tigger tails, like the marshmallows and from the Pooh Corner. And like they loved that. And I have this really fun memory with them. So you make your own memories even in that time period that you'll remember.
Yeah, that specific instance where my husband and my son went on Rise, I took my daughter and she still had some money on her budget that we had given her for her gifts. And she bought one of the little Loth cats in Galaxy's Edge. Well, and then we were wandering and we came across the some photo pass, and so she got some really great pictures with her Loth cat with one of the TIE fighters, I think it is. I'm sorry. I like Star Wars. I'm not a huge Star Wars person. But then we also on that 6th trip we found
X-Wing?
Maybe it was the X-Wing. Yes, sure. One of the ships that was really great. And then we also found the photo pass doing the lightsaber photos. So like she got to have these this whole multiple location photo shoot while we waited for Dad and brother to get off of the ride. So we have some amazing photos from that time. And it's one of my favorite memories of just like watching her just like loving it. So it was good.
Good. Okay, so another thing to remember is the flexibility is key. This was true with infants too. Same with toddlers. Just, you can have your list of things that are your priorities for the day. We recommend making it very short for this age. Like if we get to these 3 things plus this snack, like the day's golden and the rest, anything else is just bonus. As I really think that it's very hard when you maybe even if you were used to going before you had kids. And it's like a massive culture shock because you start to realize how little you can get done in a day with a small child. And so just go into it knowing that adjust your expectations accordingly, knowing that it's okay if things don't go the way that you planned. If things maybe have to adjust, and you'll make just different memories than you had planned, and that's okay too.
Yes, so true. And we talked about naps and midday breaks as well. Just again, planning accordingly for that. We also already mentioned baby care centers can still be a great thing for you to utilize even at toddler and preschool age. Not only just for potty training purposes and smaller toilets that they can use, but also they constantly have Disney movies playing and they have little seating areas. So like if you need to get out of the heat and get into the AC and let your kiddo sit and let yourself sit and just watch 20 minutes of a Disney movie, that is your place to go to do that.
Yeah, definitely when it's super hot in the heat of summer too, to get out of the sun is key. We already talked about child swap, so I think we're good.
Yeah.
We'll move on there.
Yes. Okay, let's tackle Magic Kingdom. We're going to hop through these parks fairly quickly here.
Yes.
We are going to mention some dining in this episode. We didn't talk about that with infants because chances are that you're already handling that and bringing whatever they need for your infant age. But let's talk about some toddler-friendly dining places. And we are going to talk just about quick services in this episode. We did an entire series on table service restaurants, episodes 51 through 54 of our podcast. So if you want to know more about table service, we also had a separate character meal one. We've done lots of dining. So yes, if you need that, scroll back in our episode list because you can find it there. Just a quick note about quick service. If you can mobile order, it will be a huge time saver if you've got a very hungry toddler, preschooler, kiddo, adult, teenager, anyone. Mobile order is so helpful. Not every quick service location will allow you to, so that's something you want to look up kind of ahead of time just to be aware. We are the family that likes to plan out our meals. We look to see what we think we're going to get, or we give ourselves a couple options. So looking at that is always important as well.
For sure. So some places that we recommend specifically for quick service in the Magic Kingdom, I really love Columbia Harbor House. And this is not just for food. Some of it's food things, because remember we talked about sharing your food with your toddler or getting them things they'd like to eat. But also for seating and air conditioning. Like this place really wins out for that, because just remember Columbia Harbor House, going upstairs has so much more space. Everybody thinks it's just the bottom level, but upstairs is where it's at with the Columbia Harbor House. So, but Jackie, you say your kids maybe have a harder time finding food there.
Yeah, we've never really been successful there with my kiddos' particular choices. Again, you know your kiddo and their preference when it comes to meals.
Yeah.
I don't have overly picky kids, but they're not super exploratory when it comes to that. And Columbia Harbor House has a lot of seafood. It's a lot of seafood-based stuff. And that's just not their thing. So
yeah, I really like, there's some things that come with fries and whatnot, but there's also like I always get the salmon, and it comes with so many green beans, more green beans than you'll ever need. So, and sometimes those are really, if your toddler likes green beans, those are really a toddler-friendly food. So I was thinking of that mostly.
Yeah, well, and my problem is also that my kids don't like French fries, and that's my fault, but they don't like French fries that much. So,
oh,
I know. Listen, we've already talked about this in other Mom Street. We're not going through my eating habits tonight, okay?
Another place that is a kind of a place that a lot of people will recommend is Casey's Corner. And it's very convenient too, because it is kind of on the central area of the park. And it has, things like hot dogs and whatnot. It's really basic kind of family food.
Yeah.
There's not like a ton of seating there though, which really bothers me. So it's not like my top pick first, just stopping in to get food. But there's a lot of kid-friendly food there. Cosmic Rays, though, has a lot of seating, has some fun entertainment because you have Sunny Eclipse there, which I think is really fun for toddlers to watch as he's playing music. But I honestly hate the
See, and I've never had an issue. I know other people have. I personally, my family has never had major issues with Cosmic Rays. My kids like the mac and cheese there, which is a big win. If I can find my daughter specifically mac and cheese, it's always good. So,
yeah.
but we're also not like, I know you and Elliot, especially like big food people, like we're not. So like we're very fine with like mediocre theme park food. And that's what you're going to get there. Like it really is.
Well,
So
honestly, it's a great location for seating. Indoor air conditioned seating has a ton of seating and the restrooms are fantastic. So like, if those two things are like matter to you, like, and there's a little entertainment for the kids too. So I think it's a great location for toddlers and preschoolers for that reason, if you can bear the food. So, that being said, moving on to Pecos Bill is another great location, has lots of indoor seating as well that's air conditioned, but they have a really great new menu that I've tried recently, and I've actually really loved it, which is so good because it was not good for a long time. So,
no. So yes, if you are someone who is like sworn off of the old Pecos Bill, give the new one a try. They have a lot of new options. They have, and even on the kids menu, they've got several different kind of like build your own like customizable options, which are really helpful for toddlers. If there's someone that you want to get them their own nachos or whatever, you can kind of customize it for them.
Yeah. But it's mostly kind of like Mexican food with like some burgers and stuff too. So there's lots of options there.
Yeah. And then another one that my family likes is we like Pinocchio Village House. We like the pizza there. Again, we are not, listen, Kate, we are not huge food snobs. And my oldest loves pizza. So that is our go-to place when he wants pizza, and we are in Magic Kingdom. If you can get seating by the windows that look into Small World, it's super fun to watch the boats go by. That seating is fairly coveted though. It's hard to get unless you time it right. But we are fans of Pinocchio Village House.
I will eat there once in a while. Sometimes, but it does have food that's good for kids. So yes, I agree with that. So it's on this list for that reason alone. Best rides at Magic Kingdom for kids this age. They can ride all kinds of things at the Magic Kingdom, including Astro Orbiter, Buzz Lightyear, Dumbo, the Haunted Mansion, maybe, depending if they're scared of the Haunted Mansion or not. So you kind of know your kid. If they get scared easily, that might not be a good option for them. Small World is great for this age. Jungle Cruise is also really fun with all the animals. Mad Tea Party, just be careful if they get motion sick about the spinning. But you can also just choose not to like spin it more, and that usually is okay. Magic Carpets, Pooh, Peter Pan, Pirates, Carousel, People Mover, Under the Ariel, Under the Sea, the Walt Disney World Railroad are all really good options.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about things that they can ride, but maybe are not a great choice for toddlers and preschoolers, I unfortunately have to put Carousel of Progress on that list.
Sad day.
I know. Listen,
I get it.
Yeah, just not maybe unless like you are a diehard COP fan and you have introduced your children to it and you know they'll be good for that. The main issue with that is you cannot exit. No, and that is my biggest issue. Like, you are stuck there until the show is done. So
I think maybe like the next age group up is probably where you can start recommending that safely.
I agree.
For sure.
Yes. And then things you need to check for height on. Barnstormer is 32 inches. Big Thunder Mountain is 40 inches. Seven Dwarves is 38. Space Mountain is 44. The Tomorrowland Speedway is 32 if they are driving. I think there's specifics on that one with like driving versus riding. Yes.
Yeah.
So 32 is riding. That sounds right.
Yeah.
And then 40 inches for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So again, just prepping for those height requirements, measuring your kiddos, being real careful when you measure, because you would hate to measure them at home and think they're good and then get to the parks and they're not. So just be aware and prep yourself and your children accordingly.
Yeah. You can also measure them with their shoes on, but like the regular shoes they're going to wear to the park, and don't like lift them.
No, and don't feel pad their shoes. No. Those height requirements are there for a reason, my friends. Let's be safe.
Be safe. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say the new Country Bear Jamboree show, they actually might really love that too, if they like kind of singing songs and stuff like that. So that we didn't put that one on this list, but I think that's a good one for them.
And really any of the shows that they have, Tiki Room is a great option. Country Bears is a great option.
Maybe not all the presidents.
Probably not, unless they're like gung-ho about U.S. history, which, You never know. You might have a little dose. It is. PhilharMagic is great. Enchanted Tales with Belle, I would consider more of a show and less of, it's not really a ride. It's more of a show.
Yeah.
So any of those are
That's
all
great at that age, though.
fantastic options for that age group for sure. And tons of characters like we talked about in the last episode as well.
Yeah, just know at this age with characters, some of them might still be really intimidated by the character's size, especially ones that, like, some of the face characters might be fine, but like the ones that have big costumes on, they might be too scared to meet them, and that's okay. And so don't push them to meet them if they're just like, no, I can't, no, like just wave and move on, and it's fine. Yeah.
And that's honestly where some of those point of view videos can be helpful if you show them like the opening ceremony at the castle or the stage show that they have at the castle so they can see what the characters are going to look like. Yeah. Because my kids, prior to going to Disney, anytime we went to like a sporting event and there were like mascots, they wanted nothing to do with the mascots. But the minute we met Mickey Mouse, they were like gung-ho giving hugs. So, you never know. But just,
you might not know until you get there, how they'll react to it. I think that younger ages struggle with it more than the older ones on the spectrum. Like, I think the 2-year-olds are going to maybe not be as into it, but you never know. It depends on your kiddo as well. So,
yes, for sure. And then the last thing just to mention is the fireworks show, Happily Ever After. We talked about kind of just planning your day. If you're planning to try and stay, taking that afternoon nap, making sure you have their headphones or ear protection. And we talked about Main Street gets really, really busy. So if you're just wanting to see fireworks, maybe choose an alternate location to watch. If you're wanting to see the castle projections, I would situate yourself around the outer rim if you can, so that you and your stroller don't get stuck in the middle of everything when the fireworks are done.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to Epcot. How about I'll do Epcot and then you do Animal Kingdom. We'll just kind of bounce through it. So
perfect.
With Epcot, there are a couple of toddler-friendly dining places that I would recommend. Sunshine Seasons is a great one. There is no mobile order and it does close early, but like during the day in general, it has kind of like cafeteria-style food, so you can kind of pick and choose what you might like from it. And there's a lot of indoor seating that's air-conditioned, so it's a really great place for a break. Regal Eagle Barbecue also has a lot of different options in it. Some of them are kid-friendly ones, and it's just a nice place to eat. And then the Connections Eatery, which I honestly don't really eat at much as an adult, but looking at their menu, I was like, this is perfect for families. And there is a lot of seating in there as well. So it's a little bit, the atmosphere is not the best, but for families with kids this age, I think it's great. Best Rides, Frozen Ever After is a great one. Just know that it does kind of go down a little bit of a drop, so prepare your kids for that. Three Caballeros is a really fun slow-moving boat ride. Figment, Living with the Land, all really great for this age. Remy, so the Ratatouille ride, that's a fun one. Although, Jackie, there are some sensory issues in that one, so just know.
Yeah, scares. There's some loud noises. Little kids don't love that one, unfortunately. So those ride point of views are helpful for you as well, so you can prep your kids.
Right. Spaceship Earth and then Turtle Talk with Crush is also a great one. They can technically ride Mission Space. I don't recommend it.
No.
But at 40 inches, that's the height requirement for that. So if they really love space, definitely just make sure they're on the green side, not the orange side. Yes, green side, not orange side. You also can check their height for Cosmic Rewind is 42 inches and Soarin' is 40 inches. I think Soarin' is a little bit easier on their little bodies than Cosmic Rewind. My daughter, who is 12, really struggled on Cosmic Rewind. So just, know she's 12 in that. So unless they're little thrill seekers, I probably wouldn't recommend Cosmic Rewind.
I was going to say, whereas my 5-year-old, who was tall enough to ride Cosmic Rewind, absolutely loved it and asked to go on it all the time. And was mad on our last trip that we didn't make it to Epcot because she really wanted to go on it again. So you never know. And maybe, it's hard if Epcot is your first park that you visit because you haven't really tested the waters if this is your first experience at at parks that have thrill rides. So just use your best judgment.
For sure. And Zach in my chat's also saying they have good playground at Epcot for toddlers too. And they do. They have a really fantastic playground there. So if you need a time to just sit down and let them run around and have a little freedom because they're not stuck in a stroller and a ride or something like that, I think that's a great option for them there as well.
Yeah, there's a playground right by Connections. There's a playground inside the after you get off the seas with Nemo and friends, there's like a little play area, and there's one inside of the Mission Space Building. Is that right? There's a third one.
I don't go in that building.
I don't either, and I don't know for sure. I'm pretty sure that's where the third one is. There's like a play place in the exit of.
Maybe I'll just go through the queue and then ask to exit before the ride.
Or just go in the exit.
It's in Mission Space. That's what Zach said.
Okay, Zach. That's what I was thinking, that was where the third one is. So yeah, lots of great play places inside the park at Epcot.
Yeah. And there's also tons of unique characters at this park too. So just kind of check your app to see who's available and who's meeting where. And also Luminous is really fun. Just make sure you have that ear protection. So that is like the fireworks light show at the end of the night. So we definitely recommend that for kids. So
I recommend that one almost more than Happily Ever After, I think. I think there's more to look at, and it's a little easier logistically for strollers and things like that, because you have a lot more of a viewing area. Just depends on your preference and your kid's preference, but I prefer Luminous for that age group.
Yeah.
Oh, I prefer Fantasmic overall, but Luminous over Happily Ever After is
I will never prefer Luminous over Happily Ever After. That's your just personally. But I will say, Tracy's mentioning my chat, and I did forget this. So thank you, Tracy, for mentioning it. That the Moana Journey of Water is a great place for this age group, for playing with the water, for splashing through things, for even if you don't want to get too terribly wet, there's still options for that too. But there's some great splash pads in this area for this age group. So definitely check out Moana Journey of Water as well.
Yes. Okay, are we ready for Animal Kingdom?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, so let's talk about some toddler-friendly quick service dining places at Animal Kingdom. Flame Tree Barbecue is a good option. Satuli Canteen, although you do want to double check that menu just to make sure, because they do tend to use more spices than is standard in your typical theme park food. So it's not overly spicy, so don't misunderstand, but it's not going to be just like the majority of theme park food have like no spice. Yes. So keep that in mind.
The seating is in air conditioning, which is huge because a lot of this park doesn't have seated air conditioning for a lot of places. So.
Yeah, it's not a huge space. So if you're planning to eat there, I would try to avoid like main meal times, because the overflow is outside there. So you want to make sure that you kind of plan accordingly for that. And then Pizzafari, I think, is a great option there as well. Again, my kid loves pizza. That's like his favorite thing. So we find pizza wherever we go for him. And the theming inside is pretty fun, in the murals and stuff that they have indoors there. Yeah. Best rides for that age group at Animal Kingdom. The Safari is wonderful. It's a little tricky. You got to make sure they stay seated. That's the hardest thing about the Safari at that age, because there's no seat belts and they need to stay seated. Navi River Journey is another good one. And Triceratops Spin until January 12th, which I think last episode I misspoke that we didn't have a closing date. We do have a closing date for Triceratops Spin. It is January 12th. So if you're going between now and then, have at
Show your dinosaur fun.
Yes. And but also the Wildlife Express train that goes out to Rafiki's Planet Watch and the petting zoo out there is great if that is really something that your kiddo loves. Or if they're not into the petting zoo, you can stand outside and look at the animals and still take the train there and back. It's a fun little quick train ride out there. Again, something they can do but may not be best is Tough to Be a Bug. We talked about that in our last episode. That is also going away, I believe, for the coming summer. It will be turning into, at some point, it'll be turning into Zootopia. So,
which we probably will recommend more at that point, depending.
I sure hope so. Please don't scar us with Zootopia too. And then a couple things to check your height on. Flight of Passage is 44 inches. That is a great one. It's thrilling enough, but not like, it's not as much as like a roller coaster. So it's like a more intense version of Soarin'. So
yeah, and usually by the time they're 44 inches tall, they know well enough to stay seated and not move around, because you're really distanced from them, and that you can't like put your arm around them or anything. They're on their own. So they have to be old enough to be on their own to get on that ride.
Yes. Dinosaur, which will eventually be turning into Indiana Jones. Currently, Dinosaur is a 40-inch height requirement. That may be changing when it switches over in the near-ish future. someday. That one is really jostly and dark, so definitely take a look at that one if you're planning to do dinosaur with your kids and you're not really sure about.
It's a little scary right now, so if you go right now, just be careful.
But like again, they may be like my kids that absolutely love that ride and will not ride Remy, but will ride dinosaur all day long. So
Yeah.
I can't explain it. Expedition Everest is a 44-inch height requirement. That one is pretty intense, similar to what we were talking about with Cosmic Rewind. It's got some pretty intense G-force around some of those curves. And then Kali River Rapids, if you are a water ride family, that does have a 38-inch height requirement for that one as well. And you will get wet.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yes.
You may not get drenched, but you also could get
wet
drenched.
as you will on its counterpart in Disneyland. If you're used to Grizzly River Run. But yes.
And again, the two musicals that we recommend in that park, the Finding Nemo musical and Festival of the Lion King, those are great for this age because they're so visually amazing, especially Festival of the Lion King. There's so much to look at and to watch. And both of those theaters you can exit if you need to, which is always helpful to know. So we do recommend both of those for this age.
Definitely. Okay, let's pop over to Hollywood Studios, toddler-friendly dining places. I say Docking Bay 7. It does have a couple of things that, again, are a little bit more exotic in their flavor palette, so just be aware of that. But there are a couple of things on that menu that if you were sharing your meal with a toddler, there's some chicken and things like that would be easy to do.
And some of it just looks weird, but it tastes normal. Like they have a big, giant chicken nugget, but it tastes like chicken nugget.
Right.
So like that too.
Right. I added the Backlot Express and ABC Commissary mainly because of seating and air conditioning. They're really great places to kind of get out of the AC. And they do have menus that have family-friendly foods on them, both of them.
I thought you were going to say they do have menus, and since you were going to leave it at that.
They do have menus.
They do.
I will say the ABC Commissary has become one of my go-to places, mainly because of the seating, and that's indoors in the AC. Woody's Lunchbox. If their seating area gets better, it's really hard for me to recommend it. Right now it's under construction. So, but the food is really fun for kids, but it's just a challenge right now. Pizza Rizzo also, but isn't that a table service?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I always thought it was a table service. Wow. That's Sadie. I'll have to try it out. I haven't been in there in a long time.
Yeah. I will be honest. We tend to miss it because it does close before dinner time.
Yeah,
typically.
Right.
And we usually eat dinner in the park.
That's fine.
But I don't think I've eaten there since it was the Toy Store. What was it before that? Pizza Planet.
Oh, was it Pizza Planet? I thought it was something else.
No, it was. Yeah. But as far as I am aware, they've got lots of good pizza and that type of Italian options for kids. So that's why I kind of put it on the list. And I also put on there, you can take the Skyliner to the resorts to eat as well, which is
Riviera is a great choice.
Yep. They prefer to do that usually. So
some of the best rides for toddlers here, Runaway Railway is a fantastic, really fun one for them. Toy Story Mania is as well. Also the Disney Junior, that's more of an attraction than a ride. Yes. But that's really fun for them. They can ride, but may not be the best. There is some of them here. The Alien Swirling Saucers is 32 inches. Smuggler's Run is 38. That one might be a little bit intense depending on their age. And Slinky Dog 2, if they're afraid of heights at all, that one might really freak them out. But it's really fun. So it depends on your kid. Star Tours has a potential for motion sickness, but that's 40 inches. Rise of the Resistance has one drop in it, but otherwise is pretty tame in terms of ride motion. But that's 40 inches. If they love Star Wars, they'll love Rise. And then Tower of Terror is 40 inches. And some kids might be thrill seekers and love this ride, but it is scary for the littles. And I made the mistake of taking my 4-year-old son on it. He still won't go on it to this day.
Yeah, we waited with that one, and I'm glad we did because my kids have now they've been on it once, and now we keep going. They keep going back and forth on whether or not they want to do it again on our next trip, which totally valid. So I'm glad we waited. And my son has gone on Rise, but neither of my kids have done Smuggler's Run because Not necessarily because I don't think they can handle it, but because it's a lot to ask of kids because there's like it involves button pushing and like driving the ship.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that can feel overwhelming to someone that
Yeah.
like doesn't know how to handle that. So that is primarily why my kids have not done it. They are begging me to do it next trip. So we probably will venture there. We'll have a bigger group so we can go 6 together, which will be helpful because it is a 6-person ride. So like if you're thrown in with other people and your 6-year-old is trying to drive the Millennium Falcon, it can get a little dicey.
And then you feel bad because you're like, oh, because yeah. And some people are really understanding about it. And some people are like, this ruined my ride. So that's always stressful.
Yes. Yes.
Some shows that are perfect for this age group. There is Beauty and the Beast is a wonderful show for this one. Also, Frozen is fantastic for this age. There's snow that's involved. It's really fun. And the Indiana Jones stunt show as well is entertainment. It depends on their age if, they're willing to sit through that particular one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, characters as well. Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't done Indy because fire. My kids don't like the fire. So,
yeah.
Again, this age group, it's so important as parents that you really prep yourself to know what the attractions and the shows and things are, because going into something like that, like, oh yeah, stunt show, that sounds like it could be fun. There's lots of fire and explosions, and
it's intense, and they at that age cannot discern what is real and what's not.
Yes,
so they might get really scared by some of it. Yeah.
Yes. And then we have Fantasmic. I love Fantasmic. I think it's a great option. Again, though, which again, like I talked about, my kids don't like the fire in Indiana Jones, but they love Fantasmic.
The fire wasn't lit up the last time I went. The whole lagoon, they didn't light any of it up. And I was like, so Mickey's like throwing water on stuff. I was like, you're just throwing water on water, Mickey. What are you doing?
He still has to go through the motion.
Yeah, there is some scary stuff in Fantasmic, though. So, just know your kiddo and know if they need to, like, duck their head under, your arm for a little bit while the scary stuff's happening.
Yeah, got lots of villains in that one, more so than any of the other shows. Although we're getting a new villains show in Hollywood Studios in the coming months. So,
yeah. So,
who knows? But yes, I think if you think your kiddo can handle Fantasmic, it is a great, great nighttime show. I like it because you can sit, which is super helpful for.
I wish they had backs to those benches, though, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kate, at least we have seats there.
I know. It's better than standing in Disneyland. It's true.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's move on to Disneyland. I'm going to run through this like light speed because we are running out of time. So in Disneyland, some toddler-friendly dining places I recommend. Jolly Holiday has pretty much everything for the whole family. There's no AC to sit in, and there's only so much seating. You might have to kind of like stock a table there, but it's still got a great menu for most people. The Mexican restaurant that is in Frontierland, I recommend that one as well. Has really great menu, but there's no mobile ordering there. So just be aware you're going to have to wait in line for that. Probably not for very long, depending on when you go. And then Alien Pizza Planet is also a really great one that's kind of next to Space Mountain. That one has pizza and pasta, and you can mobile order there, which is really helpful. Best rides I'd recommend. Oh, they also have Docking Bay 7 in Disneyland too. So same thing applies as before. Best rides, I would recommend anything in Fantasyland. I didn't list them out because it would take us forever, but just the Fantasyland rides. Runaway Railway in Toontown, Winnie the Pooh, Finding Nemo submarines, the Jungle Cruise. The Mark Twain Columbia sailing ship are great for animal spotting. So you kind of have to maybe be active with them, kind of like, look at this over here, look at this over there, because otherwise it might be a little bit boring for them. So just be aware. The Mad Tea Party, again, with the spinning, so be careful with that. The Goofy How to Play Yard in Toontown is perfect for this age. There's so many fun things for them to do, and slides and little things for them to play with. So definitely get over there if they need to run out some of their energy. It's a perfect place for that. I think they also reopened the little Donald boat that's in that area as well. I don't know if they opened the second level of it because that was closed for a while. But and they also have Mickey's house. You can go and play in Mickey's house in terms of like look at the stuff, even if you don't want to stand in line and meet Mickey. It's not the same for Minnie's house. You have to stand in line in order to get in her house, which is such a bummer because I love her house. It has this like hologram of these cookies that you can't like grab, which is so fun.
That's so tough.
But Anyway, so there's lots of things in Toontown for them to run around and do and play, including the little town with a little dog pound where it looks like I have like pictures of my kids like every age in that. It's so cute. Other rides, there's Roger Rabbit Cartoon Spin that's in there as well, and Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters is great. Some rides kind of may proceed with caution about whether or not they would like them. Pirates of the Caribbean, because there's 2 drops in it, and they are a little bit more intense than the Walt Disney World version. And the Haunted Mansion, especially because the screaming in the stretching room sometimes, like by other adults, is what like sets people off sometimes. It's a little bit better in the Haunted Mansion holiday version, but it's still kind of scary. So know your toddler. The rides, maybe depending on height. Autopia, to be a rider, is 32 inches. Gadget's Go Coaster is 35 inches. Might be a good first coaster for them, but also could be a little bit scary for little riders because it is a roller coaster. Smuggler's Run, we just talked about that one, but that one's 38 inches there. Splash Mountain is 40 inches. Star Tours is 40, and Rise to Resistance is 40, and Space Mountain is 40. But Space Mountain is a very intense ride in the dark, completely in the dark. But you can sit next to them in Disneyland, which you can't in Disney World. So, that might help them a little bit if they're scared of going on it.
Yeah, I'm just laughing at the fact that you wrote down Splash Mountain instead of Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
I totally did. I'm sorry. Tiana's Bayou Adventure will always be Splash Mountain in my brain, I think, forever and ever. So sorry about that. That's okay.
You read it, and then I was like, wait a minute.
What did she just say? Technically, Tiana's isn't open yet for another couple days. So,
yeah. By the time this airs, though, it will be open, Kate.
It's Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It is. So I'm sorry. I just kind of also note, though, that a lot of these rides, especially the dark rides in Fantasyland, there can be really loud and some things that startle them. So, maybe have ear protection or just kind of like watch those POVs in advance so they know what's going to happen. It's a very loud place. Other things that they can do besides seeing some characters, a lot of them hang out in Town Square or in that Fantasy Fair area if you want to meet some princesses. That there's the Disneyland Band is really fun, I think, for everybody of all ages. And the storytelling at Royal Theater, I keep pushing this, but it's fantastic and it's really fun. And at this age, they could go sit on the little carpet down below in the front, which is really fun for them to do. And then fireworks and Fantasmic, I would kind of recommend at this age, maybe going over to Small World and watching the fireworks projected, or like the projections on Small World over there. It'd be a lot less intense for the crowd. Maneuvering around is probably my recommendation for that. Otherwise, Fantasmic is great if you can find a place where they can see. Just a reminder at this age that you can't have kids stand on any planters. So don't like get in a place where you think there's like a whole second tier where you're standing right behind this row of planters. Don't think you can like hold your kid and let them stand on there, because the cast members will be like, hey, that's not safe. Please get them down. So just recognize that they might not be able to see in certain places. So get a spot early if you can, or do a dining package if you really want to see that.
You have strollers in that standing area, or do they make you park them?
I don't.
Otherwise.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
I was just curious. I hadn't been over there, obviously.
It was closed for for a long time, and because it was closed because of the panini, and then it was closed because of Murphy going up in flames. So like I haven't only seen it like a handful of times the last like couple of years.
Yeah. I was just curious whether or not you could position a stroller to give yourself some space for them to see or not.
I feel like people have put strollers in there because I know that they do. For fireworks, you're allowed to keep your stroller with you. Yeah. So I'd be surprised if they didn't. But I don't know.
Right. Sure. You said a lot of people will stay, right? Like they'll kind of camp out and do both in that space kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, because they do projections on the water after they're done with Fantasmic for the fireworks show. Because it's almost impossible to get to the hub unless you're like running. And then, there's no spot to stand because there's so many people. So they know that. So they just kind of project onto the water, the projections, and then they have the fireworks there. So if you want to see both, that's a good way to do it without trying to hurt yourself and get out in front of the castle,
Yeah. And remember that Disneyland doesn't do fireworks every night. So be aware of that. If your kiddo wants to see fireworks, you got to kind of adjust accordingly.
Yeah, Magda in my chat saying I saw loads of strollers parked during Fantasmic. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Okay, let's hop over to California Adventure, our last park here on the list. Toddler-friendly dining places. I really love Flo's V8 Cafe for families. The menu's changed a little bit from what it used to be, but it's still got a lot of really great family options. It's got chicken fenders, is what they call them, and mac and cheese. And there's, if you sit in the back, you can sit in the AC, but if you sit in the back, you can watch the cars go by for Radiator Springs Racers, which is really fun for the kids to watch. And sometimes the characters will drive up that road that's right next to it. So you can watch, Lightning McQueen or Mater go by, which is super fun for kids.
Yeah.
And adults. Right?
That's so cool.
Boardwalk Pizza and Pasta is also a great one that's kind of over near the Pixar Pier area. Really great options there for families. And also the entire San Francisco area that has, Mexican, Asian, American food. It has a whole bunch of different options. The seating there though, triggers my everything. Oh no, it's just really chaotic because they have these long tables. And then you're anytime I have to question if I'm in somebody's space because I'm sharing a table with them, I can't handle it. So
yeah, that's hard.
And it's just really chaotic. There's just a lot of it. So I recommend if you're going to eat there, doing kind of off-peak mealtime so it's not as stressful, to find a place to sit.
Yeah.
I also really love Pim Test Kitchen. It's almost impossible to find a place to sit here at all. You have to stock a table for a long time. And so I don't eat there as often as I used to because I can't. My anxiety can't. But if you have more than one person, then it's easier to do. But they have really fun food for kids there. They have some really cute things that are a play on the idea of big or small because of Pim particles. And they also have these gigantic pretzels that my kids love. So that's something we always get and we kind of share. So that's a really fun place to eat as well. Some of the rides I'd recommend, I don't know if I recommend this one, but the Golden Zephyr is one you can get on if it's running.
Anytime that one comes up, I'm alwaes all right, what's Kay going to say about it this time? Because it's always something.
I haven't been on it since my kids were small because I just lie. Right. Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind is a great one for kids this age as well, although it's in the middle of the roller coaster now in terms of the coaster goes around it, which is really loud. So just know that it's a little bit loud in that area. Jesse's Critter Carousel, Little Mermaid, Monsters Inc., the non-swinging Pixar Pal Around, so the Ferris wheel, the non-swinging cars, Turtle Talk with Crush, Mickey's PhilharMagic, Toy Story Midway Mania, I said Toy Story Midway Mania. I'm going too fast. Web Slingers is a great one for this age too, because they'll just be tossing their hands to do it, which is super easy. The Red Car Trolley Until It Goes Away is a fun one. And the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail is a great place for them to get their energy out. They do have some smaller slides and they have rope bridges and stuff that are all encased so they're not going to fall down or anything. They're going to be safe. So lots of places for them to run around and explore. You might get really tired chasing them, but it's a fun place for them. And then depending on their height, there's a couple of ones. I really love Rollickin' Roadsters, Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters, and Mater's Junkyard Jamboree for these ages. I think they're really fun. The Silly Symphony swings, 40 inches and up for the tandem swings only. They have to be a little older to be on the solo swing. Soaring Around the World, again, as long as they're not afraid of heights, that's a fantastic one for them. Radiator Springs Racers, too, at 40 inches. That one is a really fun ride. But my kids felt very insecure riding that for a long time because the car is open on the top, a convertible,
Right.
And it made them feel unsafe because they're not used to driving fast in a car that doesn't have a top.
Right.
So, just prepare your kids for that. And then Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout is pretty intense ride, so I don't recommend that. It's like Tower of Terror. So unless you have a thrill seeker, I probably wouldn't recommend that for this age group, quite honestly, even though it is a lot of fun. So, yeah. There's, of course, all the characters in this place, and they do have a Disney Junior Dance Party in Hollywoodland that's really, really fun for this age. I think it's sponsored by Pull-Ups, because they know.
I think you're right, because they have a big partnership with Disney Junior. That's funny.
And then World of Color at Night is fantastic for this age as well, if they can stay awake that long for it. Yeah. So make sure you get if you're in the park at noon, you get a virtual queue pass for it via the Disneyland app, and that way it'll get you into one of those viewing areas. So
Yeah, and something to keep in mind that you just made me think of is Disneyland has later hours. So you really got to look at those park hours, look at the times for the shows, because some of their evening shows are quite a bit later than what you see some of them in Disney World. So taking a look at those timings and planning your afternoon break accordingly can be really helpful.
Definitely. Absolutely. And it's nice at Disneyland too, because you're closer to your hotel usually, where it's
Yeah.
much easier to go back and take a break. So that's helpful.
Very, very true. Okay, I think Fast and Furious, that wraps up the majority of our thoughts about these parks. Again, we're never going to touch on everything. So if we didn't touch on something that you are like, wait, what about this? Send us a message, reach out, post on our Discord channel. All of those ways, we are happy to give you that information. But Kate, do you have any final thoughts about taking toddlers and preschoolers to Disney?
Yeah, just really enjoy it, because that age, everything is so magical for them. And it can be hard because you're tired and stressed and they're not sleeping well, you're not sleeping well, and like all that stuff. But like those years flow by, they go by so fast, so fast. And so I know it's always like you roll your eyes and somebody's like, really enjoy it right now. But I'm telling you, my kids are all older and those were like my favorite years to take them to Disney, because like everything was so magical and real to them. So just take a few moments. Put down your phone if you need to. You can capture things with your phone, or put down your phone and just like be in the moment with them, because those are very, very special memories.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that now, granted, this is, like I said, the majority of my trips with my kids have been in this age group. And that's probably why I'm partial to it right now. But it's just so special, especially for someone who had been to the parks a dozen times before I took my kids. It was like, then re-experiencing it all through them is something that you didn't get at the infant age, right? They typically they may see some things, but they're not really going to know what they're looking at or interact with it. But this toddler and preschool age is so much fun to be able to do. And it can also be so hard to not want to do everything with them. So pace yourself. Pick your highlights, figure out what you want to do, and hopefully plan a second trip to get them back, so that way you can hit anything that you didn't do on your first trip with them.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that pretty much wraps up this episode, though we still have one last section to cover here, which is our Ask the Moms area of this podcast. So this is the time when we take a question from our Mom Street community about something that's not necessarily related to what we've been talking about this episode. And so we have a question that I'm going to ask you this time, Jackie. Okay. Would you suggest a droid or lightsaber reservation for a Star Wars loving 8-year-old?
Okay, so I did some research because I needed just to get some basic information out of the way with this. Both of these are additional costs. So if you are, granted, the person who asked this probably is understanding and knows that if they've done a little bit of research, but there's quite a significant cost to both of these. So I think that is the first thing you have to kind of consider when it comes to taking an 8-year-old. The droids are less expensive, but they're still very expensive than the lightsabers. No. Both of them have a really great themed experience when it comes to either building and picking your pieces for your droid or building and putting your lightsaber together. So either way, they're going to be absolutely thrilled with the experience, whichever way you decide. Droids are a little easier to handle and carry if you're choosing to keep whatever you're making with you. The lightsabers are long and fun and difficult to carry, so you definitely want to keep that in mind. You do have the option to ship both home directly from inside of Galaxy's Edge, if that is something that you want to do, but it's not quite as fun for an 8-year-old to get it and then you don't see it again for a week because you have to wait for it to be shipped to your house. There are spaces outside of the droid depot where you build where they have like little mats that you can roll your droid around with other people, which is super fun. There are always places where you can do like photos with lightsabers and things like that. So for me, I really think the price point is probably the biggest question when it comes to this. So this was the research I did, which I kind of have a bone to pick with Disneyland because their prices are cheaper than Disney World's, which I was surprised to see for this. For this. And it is interesting to know that
like less people in Disneyland buying. Yes, quite honestly.
Yeah. But if you are a annual pass holder or a Magic Key, there are no discounts on any of these, so do keep that in mind. And that goes for, like I said, both parks. But for Droids at Hollywood Studios, you were going to pay $119.99 before taxes and fees and things like that. Yeah, it was not that much when my son did it a couple years ago. And at least one guest, you can have 2 people that go in for your reserved time, which you do have to make via the website. They suggest 3 and up, and one person has to be 14 and up. So you could send like your 2 kiddos in as long as one of them is 14 and older. At Disneyland, it is $99.99. So cheaper to do it at Disneyland. Again, same requirements for age. With the lightsaber, this is, you'll hear the price difference for a lightsaber. Again, it's very different. It starts at $249.99. They suggest 5 and up with, again, one guest being 14 or older. At Disneyland, it is $219.99. Again, cheaper. Fine. With, again, 5 and up.
My lightsaber.
Yes. I know. Well, literally, I was like, okay, that is actually good to know, because if my son requests to do either of these, I will tell him, no, you got to wait till we go out to Disneyland.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of people in my chat. I have Lem from Magic Bands and Trash Cans. I have Allie Beth and Disney Dad all saying droid. And I would agree too. I have done droids with 2 out of 3 of my children. I'm sure I'll have to do the third one sometime soon. And it's such a fun experience because when they have the conveyor belts of pieces that go by, and they literally get to design their own droid. They get to pick all the pieces they want and put them in a basket, and then they get to go assemble it and like pick what voice they want in it and like all that stuff. So it's so great at that age when they're kind of at that like really, really very, very creative age at age 8, when they're like making their own thing and making it theirs, I think is so important. It doesn't mean that there aren't things you can customize and whatnot with the lightsabers as well. Yeah. So there's there are lots of kyber crystals and stuff like that.
And you can pick the formation of your hilt and stuff. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not a huge Star Wars person. I know there are like 4 different options with that.
Yeah.
That you.
I feel like it's more customizable though with the droids, because there's so many different colors and pieces and styles. So it's a little bit more.
And I think if you're going for longevity and kind of practicality, the droid makes a lot more sense. Oh, yeah. The lightsaber is great, but how much is your 8-year-old going to play with it in a safe way when you get home?
Depends on, because if they're like a huge Star Wars person and that lightsaber is going to like make their whole world, then great, you know.
And if they're ready to, display it on the wall and have it, that's great. Or if they want to learn to spin it and all that kind of stuff, great. But I really think at 8, the droid is probably the better way to go. It's a lot more practical for them to have to then be able to play with when they get it home.
For sure. And the price point too, I think is more reasonable for most families. So
yes.
Depends on your budget. Right. So
yes, absolutely. Oh, I will also mention that as I was looking this up, in Disneyland, they have a 3rd droid option that they don't have in Disney World. So you guys, Disneyland has the R unit. I'm going to try here. The R, like R2-D2 unit, the BB unit, but then also a C unit.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Which Disney World does not have. They just have the R unit and the BB unit.
Okay, so I got to take my daughter and convince her to get that one, our unit, because we have the other 2.
Yeah. So depending on your preference as well, that may sway you if you're deciding which coast you're going to. I don't know. Maybe you have an unlimited budget and can decide that you're going to,
because the drones are cheaper.
Yeah, and they have more options. Who knows, right? But overall, yes. To answer the question shortly, I would say the droid makes more sense for an 8-year-old in our opinion, I guess.
Definitely.
Yes. So thank you so much to those of you who have sent in questions for our Ask the Moms. We always love hearing for you. And if you have a question for a future Ask the Moms, please send it our way. You can send it to momstreetusa@gmail.com, or we are at momstreetusa on all of the social media platforms. You can get it to us. We also have our Discord channel on our good friend Kirk at Walrus Carp on his Pocket Fam Discord. You are welcome to post things in there as well.
Yes. That being said, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of Mom Street USA. Next time, we will be jumping into the next age group, which is school-aged kids, which is what some of my kids are right now, which is a very, very fun age to take kids to Disney. So that's coming up on our next episode. But for now, Jackie, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
If you have a toddler or preschooler, just take them. Just do it. Yeah. It's so much fun. It's so magical for them and for you to see them in that situation. Just do it. It's so worth it.
You might be tired, but it will be worth it.
Yes.
I agree.
For sure.
Right. Well, thank you, friends, for being with us for this episode, and we'll see you next time on Mom Street USA.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.